knows. What up, doe? I'm David Jacoby. And on the cool check-in. Together with Jalen Jacoby, what is it that we do? We give the people what they want. Happy Friday, everyone. Since it is Friday, that means we had professional football last night. The 49ers are undefeated. They faced Kyler Murray and the Cardinals and won 28-25. Jimmy G went off, 317 passing yards, 4 touchdowns. Jalen, what did you think of Jimmy G, George Kittle, and the new Emmanuel Sanders for the 49ers?
Props to what the 49ers, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are building, because it's starting from the top down. They understood that they needed a number one receiver. Went and got one, Emmanuel Sanders, 7 catches, 112 yards in a TD. Already have a top-tier tight end in Kittle. It unlocks their offense for one that was so very run-dominant. Now, all of a sudden, it sets up the play action, and Garoppolo can have a 4-touchdown pass game. It looked complete. Earlier in the year, the defense was carrying the load, and the offense was running the football, but it was more pedestrian as it related to passing yards. Last night, the total team concept got unlocked, and it looked really good.
It really did look good, and you mentioned George Kittle, and he always had something to say, and here's what he had to say about his starting quarterback, Jimmy G. Let's listen.
He's pretty good. I don't know why people don't think he is. He makes some pretty gutsy throws out there, doesn't he? Goodness gracious. I can't say enough about just how he brings us along, just whether it's on the sideline or in the huddle, and, the leadership that he has, but the fire that he, has too, just gets the people going. And just to see him, make those plays and, allow him to get those people off his back that, say, hey, maybe he's not, what we think he is. But, everyone in this building or in our locker room knows what he is. It's fun to see that.
The 49ers are 8-0, yet it seems like in the media we don't respect Jimmy G like he is the quarterback of an undefeated football team. Do you think he should be considered amongst the best quarterbacks in the league?
Absolutely not, because he isn't. And let's not act like Garoppolo's an underdog. He got $100+ million deal after starting 7 games. Okay, look back at the passing numbers over the first 7 weeks. They were average at best. He went off against the Cardinals. We are giving him credit. 4 big touchdown passes, but he's not an underdog at all.
Well, he went off against the Cardinals, and Kawhi Leonard went off against the San Antonio Spurs last night. He had 38 points to help the Clippers beat the Spurs 103-97. Jalen, what did you think about Kawhi's big night?
You know how much I love Kawhi. We both were coached by Steve Fisher. I've been following his game and his growth and maturity for very long. And defense used to be his calling card until his offense caught up. Yep. That's what made him the best and most complete player on both ends of the floor in the league and the reigning finals MVP. But let me tell you what I don't like. Turn it on the television. His team is playing at Utah, and he's already missing games due to load management. It's 2 weeks into the season, and we already got players sitting out games. So I'm not surprised that he had a big-time game because he's arguably the best player in the league. But also, he had a handful of days off. So I anticipated that he was going to have a big game going up against his former squad.
So my question for you about load management is this. Does Kawhi Leonard tell the Clippers that he wants to take a certain game off, or do the Clippers tell Kawhi Leonard that he's going to take a certain game off?
So here's a dirty secret. There are multiple teams around the league who have a medical staff who basically acknowledge how many minutes a player should play, how many hours a night you should sleep, and they will go and tell the team that a guy, in Kawhi's case, that has dealt with some injuries, could use a day off. However, the buck stops with the player. Name any player from a previous era. Allen Iverson, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Reggie Miller, Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, John Stockton. Imagine somebody going to those guys and saying, we want you to not play tonight. What do you think that conversation would go like?
It just would not happen. It would never, ever happen in a previous era. But when you win a championship with the Toronto Raptors and you only play 60 games, it's hard to argue with the results. How many games do you think he will play for the Clippers this regular season out of the 82?
Well, you don't put that toothpaste back in the tube. You just said it. Once you win a championship and you miss 22 games in doing such, that's going to be the norm going forward. So I'll say 68 is the number of games he'll play this year.
It seems about right. That does seem about right. Jalen, I have huge news. The New Orleans Pelicans won a basketball game. The New Orleans Pelicans won a basketball game, and it's not just that they won, it's how they did it. They got 25 from Ingram and 26 points from that man, Jahlil Okafor. Jalen, can the Pelicans count on this duo to produce like that as the season progresses?
Yes, they can count on the Duke duo. And I was somebody that used his voice to make sure I acknowledge when the 76ers basically buried Jahlil Okafor when they drafted Joel Embiid. He showed me he could play in the league then. And so I appreciate that he's reinvented himself. Alvin Gentry has given him an opportunity, put him in positions to shine. Now you see both of those guys. Ingram has already shown me he can score the basketball. He can shoot the three. He likes to play a lot more mid-range than the analytics guys like for him to play. But he has a complete offensive game, and it continues to grow. So it was great to see both of those guys have a big night in the victory.
It is. I always root for players that I feel have been disrespected by previous franchises, like Jahlil Okafor and Markelle Fultz comes to mind. And I think you do too, because once upon a time, you may have been a victim of some DMPs from a certain head coach that still stays with you to this day. Something that was very notable about this game, Michael Porter Jr. Not only did he played 21 minutes, had 15 points. He looked great. What do you see from Michael Porter Jr.?
All of the signs of a player that the Denver Nuggets are going to need to take that next step. And this is why you draft him in the lottery while he was injured, even though a lot of people understood that he had a top-tier talent. Because if you look up front for the Nuggets, Paul Millsap is starting basically and playing a lot of those quality minutes. And if you look at the adaptivity of playing alongside the Joker, who's not the most athletic player in the league, but he's very smart, he's very skilled, and he's very versatile. I think a stretch four playing beside him really would put them in a position to take it to the next step. And so it was great to see this young player who's overcome so many injuries get out there and perform and have a big game.
He had a big game and he played well. Why do you think they waited this long for him to get minutes?
Because of the injury history. It's one of those things I always say. If a player tells you they're ready to go, you're like, all right, big fella, I got you. I got you so much that I'm going to rest you a couple of more games to be safe. And that's what they did. We all saw the anticipation of, is he going to play tonight? Is he going to play the next night? They bringing him along slowly so you don't have any setbacks.
Well, Mike Malone was very upset after this game. He said that we're a great talk team. He's like, they talk about having championship aspirations, but they're not backing it up. And I've mentioned this before, and I'm going to say it again. You mentioned the stretch four. I love the stretch Mark 5 that they have, Jokic, but he's really feast or famine. He was 13, 6, and 6 in this game. What can they do to get more out of Jokic?
Jokic just has to be a lot more aggressive and effective. And the great thing about having a season the way he had last year, not people gonna come for you, Jacoby. You know how this works. You're on the scouting report now. They're gonna double team you. They're gonna triple team you. They're gonna understand where you're most effective on the floor, and they're gonna try to take that away from you. One of the beauties of Jokic's game is that he's not athletic. But the rest of the league is very athletic. And so therefore, that speed and that leaping ability, I think a lot of defenses are using that against him.
I think you make a really good point, because the Nuggets kind of snuck up on everybody last year, and they had such a great record that they're not sneaking up on anybody this year. And Coach Malone is talking about it. He's upset about some of their performances, especially defensively. They gave up a lot of fast break points, and I think that's sort of what you hinted at, the scouting report. They're not, the expectations are high. People gear up to play against them, and I predict that they'll probably have a worse record this year than last year because of that. Jalen, Jokic, we talked about, is one of the best bigs in the league. Two of the best bigs in the league a couple nights ago got tangled up in a fracas, and that was Joel Embiid and Karl Anthony Towns. And now the league has levied the suspensions. 2 games for Embiid, 2 games for Towns, 0 games for Ben Simmons. What do you think about the penalties for the fight?
Simmons should at least got 1 game because he's actively participating right there with his arm around Karl Anthony Towns' neck. Okay, I don't care what they said to one another. He's literally on the back of him, basically choking him. And so I think the NBA got that part wrong. I like the 2 games not being more, and here's why. And I mentioned this yesterday. They were in such close proximity of one another that none of the blows landed flush, and they ended up grappling and throwing one another to the floor. It wasn't like they got a chance to square up and make it look like an ugly scene that would have caused them to have to suspend them for more games.
I'm also surprised about Ben Simmons' lack of suspension because the 76ers were trying to call him a peacemaker. What kind of peacemaker chokes somebody out? Like, he's got his eyes choking him out. That is not making peace. That is violent, aggressive behavior that literally can kill a person. But they're calling him a peacemaker. Ben Simmons woke up. He was like, wait, I didn't get suspended? I didn't get suspended? You know you did something wrong when the person is surprised they did not get suspended. Jalen Rose, I am surprised by the start that the Miami Heat have had, and they won last night, and they had a very interesting leading scorer. We'll tell you who that is right after this.